Hallo, hallo. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bayerischer Hof. Servus. This is not the beginning. This is just the warm-up. This is the stage where all the politicians, VIPs, and world leaders will discuss the world challenges up to tomorrow. But one of these challenges we want to discuss today: privacy, security, and you. And you means really you, because this is not just a panel discussion, it's a town hall meeting. What does it mean? That your questions, your statements count. Yeah, you can promote the discussion. And I want to help you with that. And so I bring you the microphone, and you can raise your hand and say, oh, I want to ask Lieutenant General Hodges, for example, about cyber warfare, or whatever. It's all allowed what is related to the topic. Please, take the chance, raise your hands, give me a sign if you want. May I can ask you, what are your expectations?
I would like to learn something about maritime security and satellite surveillance, about some technical things.
Technical things, okay, yeah. We will see if we can line out some technical things. Sorry, may I can ask you, why are you here? What do you want to know?
Everything.
Good attitude, but no, to be honest, what means privacy, for example, in the digital century for you?
I think it's a very complicated issue, because privacy is as important as ever, I think, even in the digital time.
So maybe you already have a question?
No, I would like to wait and see what the people there are going to say, so maybe, I don't know.
Okay, both of you are counting you, yeah? Maybe you got a question? So, yeah, there's one. You have already a question. You can also...
Yeah. My question would be about IT security and also its global relation in this case.
Cool. I come back to you later on, but maybe you can... Sorry, Entschuldigung. You can clarify a little bit your question. Maybe do you find a special topic or in that? Because this is a really huge question, maybe the most important question. So, what about you? What are your expectations?
Well, I think I first listen to what the panel has to say, and then we'll see if I have some questions about that. But the topic in general is just very, I think it's something that touches everyone here, and so I'll see.
Okay, it's always easy. First listen and then to criticize them. I see somebody of you are checking your mobile devices, yeah? Yeah, we are all online, I know. And if you are too shy to raise your hand or give me a sign to say, oh, hey, Hendrik, I want to ask something, yeah, you can also send a tweet. Use the hashtag MSC 2015, and maybe your tweet will be on the screen. And yeah, maybe we got already some questions. No, it's more like, hello, I'm here. Okay, my name is Hendrik Loven. I'm a TV journalist working for the Bavarian Broadcast Center, Bayerischer Rundfunk, and the ARD. And please don't hesitate to give me a sign or raise your hand. Yeah, it's not a panel discussion, it's a town hall meeting, yeah? It's up to you, please. So please give our host, Sabina Wolf, and our guest a warmly welcome with the applause, please. Our host, Ms. Wolf, she's a colleague of mine, TV journalist, also working for the Bavarian Broadcast Center and the ARD. So.
Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our panel this afternoon, Privacy, Security, and You, at the eve of Munich's 51st Security Conference. Lately, we have seen high-profile attacks that have plagued private and companies and individuals. It seems like the society as a whole is a target by hackers sensitive governmental data, intellectual property, medical reports, financial credentials of private persons. Everything seems to be hijacked or stolen. So we want to ask today, what impact does that have, those recent cyber attacks, on our society, on our privacy, and also on our life? So first of all, I would like to introduce you the panel, our participants today. I'm very happy to say hello to Mr. Clemens Binninger, here on the right side. I would like to introduce Clemens Binninger to you. Clemens Binninger is Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Control Panel at the German Bundestag, representing the German government today. He's a member of the Parliamentary Control Panel, there since 2009. The Parliamentary Control Panel is responsible for controlling the German intelligence services like BND, MAD, or Verfassungsschutz. Mr. Binninger, in the CDU-CSU faction, the CDU-CSU-Fraktion, is responsible for counterterrorism, cybersecurity, organized crime, and oversight of the intelligence services. Welcome, Mr. Binninger. To my right, I want to welcome Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, the commanding general of the US Army in Europe. Thanks for coming. After General Ben Hodges' first assignment as an infantry lieutenant in Germany, he commanded infantry units at the company, battalion, and brigade levels at the 101st Airborne Division and in Operation Iraqi Freedom. His most recent operational assignment was as Director of Operations, Regional Command South in Kandahar, Afghanistan. His last assignment was as Commander in NATO Allied Land Command from 2012 to 2014. Let us welcome Lieutenant General Hodges. We have a journalist on the panel, Mr. Georg Mascolo. Hello, Mr. Mascolo. Since February last year, Mr. Mascolo is heading a joint investigation network consisting of North German Broadcasting, NDR, we call it, West German Broadcasting, Westdeutscher Rundfunk, and the national daily Süddeutsche Zeitung. Before that, since 2008, Mr. Mascolo was one of the two chief editors of the weekly Der Spiegel. And he knows the US quite well. He's been in Washington chief correspondent for 3 years until 2007, and you've been chief of the Berlin bureau at the Spiegel as well. So in addition to that, I want to stress that you are a member of the Atlantic Brücke and a member of the core group of the Munich Security Conference. Welcome, Mr. Mascolo.
Thank you.
I want to introduce Mr. Painter. Hello, Mr. Painter. He's representing the US government, and he is the coordinator for cyber issues at the State Department. Before, Chris Painter has served in the White House as Senior Director for Cybersecurity Policy in the National Security Staff. And during his 2 years at the White House, Mr. Painter was a senior member of the team that conducted the President's cyberspace policy review and subsequently served as acting cybersecurity coordinator. He was also coordinating the development of the President's 2011 international strategy for cyberspace and chaired high-level interagency groups devoted to international cyber issues. Is that right? Yeah. So now Mr. Painter is coordinating and leads the United States diplomatic efforts to advance an open and secure and a reliable internet and information infrastructure. Finally, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sabina. I'm a journalist at Bayerischer Rundfunk, ARD, working in the Politics and Economic departments, and my specialty is cybersecurity, as you might guess. So let me just add this, last but not least, before we open the panel. You have the opportunity to comment live via Twitter. The moderated tweets will be shown on the screens. And if you want to pass on this information, the event will be live streamed. Okay, so everybody here on the panel will present himself. And I would like to start with Mr. Binninger. Thank you for your introductory remarks.
Ja, vielen Dank und auch an meine drei Mitstreiter hier auf dem Podium. Ich bin vorhin schon gefragt worden, was ich überhaupt unter Cybersicherheit verstehe und was die Herausforderungen sind für uns. Und ich habe jetzt ein paar Jahre Gesetzgebung in diesem Bereich hinter mir und muss eigentlich feststellen, dass wir häufig ja nur hinterherhinken können als Gesetzgeber in einer Entwicklung, die ganz maßgeblich vom Nutzerverhalten der User, von Geschäftsmodellen und von Innovation getrieben ist. Und wo die tägliche Vernetzung von allen Lebenssachverhalten in einem Maße zunimmt, dass immer mehr Daten unterwegs sind und es immer schwieriger ist, Daten überhaupt zu schützen. Also insofern habe ich mir als die Illusion, dass man alles schützen könnte, habe ich sowieso nicht. Aber wir sagen, wir brauchen einen sicheren E-Mail-Verkehr. Der Staat muss hier Angebote machen. Wir brauchen im Bereich der Nachrichtendienste Möglichkeiten, Daten auszuwerten. Aber ich bin, um es gleich vorneweg zu sagen, halte nichts davon, wenn Nachrichtendienste sagen, wir sammeln einfach mal alle Daten, die wir kriegen können, in der Hoffnung, daraus hinterher eine Spur zu generieren, sondern wir brauchen Datengewinnung gezielt gegenüber Terrorverdächtigen. Und wir haben den dritten Bereich, neben den privaten Usern, den Diensten, das ist die Wirtschaft, wo wir, glaube ich, noch gar nicht wissen, wie wenig unsere Wirtschaft vielleicht gegen Cyberangriffe geschützt ist. Gerade kleinere Unternehmen, mittelständische Unternehmen, die nicht in der Lage sind, eine eigene IT-Abteilung zu unterhalten. Und deshalb wird dort ein Impuls der nächsten Monate sein, dass wir ein IT-Sicherheitsgesetz verabschieden, wo wir einerseits die Unternehmen verpflichten, mehr zu tun für die Sicherheit, und zwar all die Unternehmen, die kritische Infrastrukturen betreiben, also Energieversorger, Finanzdienstleister und Ähnliches mehr. Und wir aber auch wissen wollen, wann werdet ihr angegriffen, um überhaupt ein Lagebild zu haben. Weil eines rankt sich für uns ja auch beim Thema Cyberattacken, wir wissen eigentlich nicht, woher sie kommen. Wir haben nicht das Lagebild mit Tätergruppen oder Tätern. Man kann es immer nur vermuten. Und egal, wie Sie einen Angriff zurückverfolgen können, Sie können nie ganz sicher sagen, dass er aus diesem Land, von diesem Server oder woher auch immer kam, sodass da die Herausforderungen sicher sehr groß bleiben. Und die drei Felder für mich zentral sind: Schutz der privaten Daten, aber auch Arbeitsfähigkeit der Nachrichtendienste und Schutz der Wirtschaft, was die Daten angeht. Aber, so habe ich eingeleitet, es wird immer schwieriger werden, die Daten zu schützen, weil unser Verhalten im Alltag in den Unternehmen jeden Tag mehr Daten produziert. Nur ein Beispiel noch zum Schluss. Das Auto der Zukunft, und das ist gar nicht so weit weg, vielleicht in 2, 3, 4 Jahren, wird mehr Daten über ihr Fahrverhalten produzieren, als sie Kilometer fahren. Und was man mit diesen Daten dann wieder machen kann, ist eine andere Frage. Und so kann man es auf alle Lebenssachverhalte übertragen. Und deshalb, glaube ich, ist Datenschutz wichtiger denn je, aber es ist auch schwieriger denn je.
Thank you very much for your first remarks.
Also ich hoffe, das war jetzt so gemeint, weil ich war mir nicht ganz sicher, ob ich noch mal was zu mir sagen soll. Sie wollten schon einen inhaltlichen Input haben, oder?
Yes,
genau.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Unless you want to add something personal or to your person.
Soll noch?
No, if you feel like that, go
Sie
ahead.
haben mich wunderbar vorgestellt, da gibt es nichts hinzuzufügen.
Good. Let me just briefly introduce to you Ambassador Botschafter Ischinger, who would like to pass on some introductory remarks. Hello, Mr. Ischinger. I was told you'd come on stage for a second.
I don't really want to interrupt this event. Are we speaking English or German here?
Whatever, I think English.
English, is that better? So I just want to take one brief moment to welcome all of you. I think this event not only has a very interesting focus on cyber issues, it is also part of our effort to make sure that the public in Munich, the public in Germany and beyond understands that the Munich Security Conference is not really a closed shop activity. We try to be as transparent, as open, as interactive as we can. So I want to thank the organizers, the participants, the panelists. Chris, welcome to you, for doing this. And let me just add one additional word about the scope of the entire conference. We have to meet an ambitious goal. A few weeks ago, the University of Pennsylvania published its annual poll, its annual study on which think tanks around the world are doing better than others. They have rankings in many, many different categories. And I'm happy to report to you that in the category of which is the best think tank conference in the entire world, the Munich Security Conference ranked not number 30, not number 15, not number 3, but number 1. So we want to make sure that by broadening the scope from traditional hardcore military issues to the whole range of modern security issues, including cyber, including energy, including many other specific challenges that we are meeting here in Europe or globally, need to be covered. And we're finding out that between Friday evening and Sunday morning, it's practically impossible to have a serious discussion about all of the currently pressing issues. So I'm really delighted to see that a number of foundations, institutions, companies, and other bodies are stepping in and helping us create additional events for participants of the conference, but also for people like you who will not be part of the official government delegations, etc., that will begin filling this room as of tomorrow afternoon. But enjoy this setting. Where you are sitting now will be sitting a 4-star general, or maybe John Kerry, or maybe Frau Merkel, as of tomorrow afternoon. And so thanks for your interest. Thank you for coming here and doing this. And I need to apologize that I can't stay here for a very long time because we have a few other events where I need to at least briefly say hello in the course of this afternoon. Have a great time. Thank you, and sorry for the interruption.
Thank you, Mr. Ischinger, and bye-bye. He's just leaving the room. Okay, let's continue on our panel with our participants. And right next to me, General Hodges, your 5 minutes, please.
Sabina, thank you. I come from North Florida, so my English might not be exactly the English that you studied at school. So I will speak slowly.
Thanks.
I am the commander of the U.S. Army in Europe. We have about 30,000 American soldiers that are stationed predominantly in Germany, but also in northern Italy and in Belgium, and then small groups of American soldiers that work in various NATO headquarters all over the continent, actually. I would like to enlist your help today because I have a challenge that involves the threat of a cyber attack, but the use of the cyber domain for the U.S. Army, but also as part of NATO. I was hoping it was a beer. We're in Munich, but
we call it water breach.
This is a major disappointment.
First word.
Mein Deutsch ist ganz besser mit Braunwasser. So,
That's
I am convinced that the United States is never going to conduct an operation or fight in any sort of a security operation alone. We have learned over the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, in Africa, and other places that, number one, we don't have the capacity to do anything alone. We also recognize that other nations have capabilities that we don't have. And maybe more importantly, we've realized that the legitimacy of what we're doing is enhanced when other nations, when we're working in concert with other nations. That does not mean that we need a UN seal of approval to do anything. Every nation, including Germany, always has the sovereign right to do what it believes is in its best interest. But from a practical standpoint, we are always going to try to be part of a coalition, if not within the context of NATO, the most successful alliance in the history of the world. So what does that mean? And what does that have to do with cyber? That means that American soldiers, we depend on digital systems for communications, what NATO calls CIS, Communications and Information Systems. We depend on the latest technical capabilities to communicate. And so we will have American soldiers under German commanders, and perhaps German commanders will be under a French commander, and they'll be under a British commander. That is the normal way of conducting military operations. It's what we're doing in Afghanistan right now. Each nation, including my own, wants to protect its system, but yet my nation is going to put American soldiers under maybe an Estonian commander or a German commander or Italian. So how do you have systems that work together and yet each nation still has to protect their system? And we know that the enemies, potential enemies of NATO, of the EU, have used and will continue to use every form of cyber attack to either intercept or disrupt or destroy our capability to communicate. Since the illegal annexation of Crimea, President Putin has injected significant amounts of what we call electronic warfare capability to attack the communication systems of Ukrainian forces. After that, at the Wales Summit, the 28 nations of NATO agreed that we had to provide assurance to the allies who live closest to Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria. But we also, as an alliance, had to adapt. We had to make sure that our organizations, our procedures were relevant to this new security environment where Russia uses hybrid warfare. And the purpose of hybrid warfare is to stay just below Article 5. And as you will know, in NATO, the Washington Treaty, Article 5 means an attack on one is an attack on all. So if Germany were attacked, 27 other countries would be there to assist. So the ambiguous part is what constitutes Article 5? Does a cyber attack that destroys a nation's economic, cyber infrastructure that enables an economic system or governmental system, if that's destroyed by a cyber attack, does that constitute Article 5? So that's our challenge. We're always going to be multinational, and we have a threat that is aware of what Article 5 is and where the threshold is, and they will do all that they can to stay just below that while separating the alliance. That's the challenge, and I look forward to your questions, and if you have ideas of how we can do this, I will write them down. So thank you.
Thank you, General Hodges. So let's listen to Mr. Painter, Coordinator for Cyber Issues at the State Department.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me here at the Munich Security Conference, and thanks to the Munich Security Conference, and also the U.S. Embassy and the Consulate here in Munich, who helped sponsor this. I should say that even before I was at the White House and became a policy wonk, I was a prosecutor. I've actually done cyber things, cyber crime cases at that time for about 22 years, so I have some perspective in this. I'm also a recovering lawyer, and so normally you tell a lawyer joke in the beginning to break the ice, and the problem I've seen in my long career is that the problem with lawyer jokes is that lawyers don't think they're funny and non-lawyers don't think they're jokes. So I'll dispense with that. I think that one thing that's been clear in the context of the long time I've done this is that this issue is really transformed from something that many people saw as a very technical issue, just the province of people who understood computers and how they worked, to really a policy issue. I think the Sony attacks that recently happened really crystallized for many people that this is not just a technical issue, but it's a core national security issue, economic security issue, human rights issue, and ultimately a foreign policy issue as well, and I think that's really important. And the panel today, I think the discussion today is important because it's privacy, security, and you, and I think I really want to emphasize the and part of that. It's not privacy or security or you, it's really privacy and security and you, and I think you can have all of those things, and that's indeed what I think our vision is and why it's so important to work with our partners, including Germany, in realizing this. Let me talk about the and for a little bit. The United States has been dealing with privacy and security related matters and how they balance for many, many years. We were a relatively young country, I guess, as the countries go, but even back in 1791, we enshrined in our Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, this idea of privacy. And so it's an important issue for us, and the balance of privacy and security is something that we always talk about and struggle with, but it's important in the cyber realm as well. We, in our government and our partners, when we've had these policy discussions, it's not just the government that has them, it's us, it's civil society, it's the private sector working together. I've tried to address and come up with a framework for this, and in the cyber realm, that started back when President Obama took office in 2009. It was mentioned, I was at the National Security Council at the time, where he did a cyberspace policy review. We got all the agencies together and we looked at this, but we also talked to the other stakeholders. But then we did something called the International Strategy for Cyberspace that President Obama released in 2011, and that was sort of our blueprint, if you will, our guide for how we look at these issues. And what that set out is a future, I think, that both the US and Germany share. It's a infrastructure that supports international trade and commerce, strengthens national and international security, fosters free expression and innovation. And to do this, to build and sustain an environment in which norms of responsible and acceptable behavior guide states' actions and sustain these partnerships and support the rule of law in cyberspace. And so what is, that's good language, but what does that all mean? Well, this international strategy talked about every different part of cyberspace. It started with the economic issues and internet governance. It talked about internet freedom issues and openness. It talked about security. It talked about military issues. It talked about cybercrime issues. It really covered the gamut and brought those all together because these really are cross-dependent in many different ways. And it helped us create this framework, which is meant to do several things. It's meant to allow us to address economic growth and innovation while at the same time pursuing secure, reliable, and resilient networks, combating cybercrime, defending our military's networks, as you heard from General Hodges, promote an effective and inclusive structure for internet governance, but also at the same time building capacity through development around the world so everyone can realize this vision, and securing fundamental freedoms, including freedom of expression and privacy in cyberspace. And I think that and is very important there. Now, this may sound somewhat like a laundry list, but it really isn't. It is our framework for the way we look at these issues, and when we go around the world, this is something that we promote. And just to give you a couple sort of data points of what we're doing in the digital age on this, is that we've been talking a lot about these cyberspace issues, and for many of you, probably there's not really much of a difference between cyberspace and the ordinary world. I remember going to a conference that then Foreign Minister Haig had in London on cyberspace now 4 years ago. And there have been a series of conferences since then. The next one will be in The Hague in April, where they had a youth forum. And the youth forum did a report out to the bigger forum. And the youth forum said, I don't know why you old guys keep talking about cyberspace. It's just our lives. So in some ways, these are not just separate issues. It's not a separate domain in and of itself. It really affects everything we do. So what we've been doing, some of the things we've been doing is focusing with our international partners on a policy level, talking about all these issues and really talking both to like-mindeds and non-like-mindeds about this. And this kind of forum, the Munich Security Conference, offers a good venue for doing this. We talked a little bit about NATO and some of the activity there. One important thing that happened in NATO and also in a UN group was a recognition that international law and the UN Charter applies in cyberspace just like it does in the physical world. So it's not a wholly lawless space, and that has lots of implications we can talk about. The UN Human Rights Council said that you have the same rights online as you do offline. Doesn't seem surprising to many of us, but that was a major achievement to get that. Through the Freedom Online Coalition, which both Germany and the US are members, we've been advancing the cause of internet freedom. When my office was started 4 years ago, I was one of the first I think the first cyber diplomat in a foreign ministry. There are now about 18 to 20 around the world, including in Germany, and I think that's important. We also use our diplomatic channels to respond to some of these incidents, like the Sony incident, and like the denial of service attacks that were against our financial institutions, where we can both reach out through our technical channels to build cooperation, but also reach out through our diplomatic channels and really raise this as more of a high-profile issue. And we'll talk about more of this in the question and answers, but we've also been advancing what are appropriate norms of behavior in cyberspace. What are kind of confidence-building measures you could do so states who may not trust each other can build more confidence and transparency. And I think all of those things are important. And that helps you avoid the cyber conflicts that I think you were talking about a little bit in your opening. I think it's important also to note that the US and Germany share these common values. And we may have a different way of approaching this, but we both have this shared vision, but we also have challenges in how we address these. And I think we have a shared concern for privacy rights. Certainly in the aftermath of the Snowden disclosures, as you know, President Obama directed a review and reform of the United States' signal intelligence practices and how we keep all of us safe from terrorism in a changing world, which has been punctuated by some of the events that we've just seen in the last few weeks, while at the same time maintaining our commitment to liberty, privacy, and other core values. He said that the power of new technologies means there are fewer technological constraints than ever before on intelligence ability to obtain information, but he also said that only increases our obligation to ask ourselves the tough questions about when and how and under what circumstances we should use those technologies, not just for the security of the US, but for the security of our friends and allies. And I think that's important. And as you know, there's been a really robust debate happening in the US. There's been a number of reforms that the president has talked about. Just recently this week, our Director of National Intelligence issued a report talking about some of the progress, but also noting that this is not over. This is not checking the box. There's a number of things we need to look at. But there's been a fair amount of progress in trying to look at those practices, have a debate about them, put the right kinds of safeguards in place, not just for US citizens, but also how this affects citizens in other countries, to the point that you were making earlier. And I think that's an important aspect, including how do you apply things like protections in the Privacy Act to European citizens like they would apply to US citizens, and seeking legislation there. And there's a number of things that have happened in the US in terms of release of classified information and procedures and reform of some of those procedures. And I really would direct you to look at that report, because it gives you a good sense of what's happened. And it was just really released very, very recently, just earlier this week. I also think it's important to note that when the president talked about this, he made it clear that the purposes for gathering intelligence are for specific things: counterproliferation, counterterrorism, and limited the uses that intelligence could be used for. And I think that's important. And there's been a constant engagement with our civil liberties and privacy community, including the Civil Liberties and Oversight Board in the White House. And then Secretary Kerry at the Freedom Online Coalition last year talked about the necessity for four things: rule of law, transparency, oversight, and proper purpose, and that all free societies should have when they do this, because all countries do have to protect their citizens, and intelligence is an important part of that. But they have to have this kind of oversight and transparency, and that's very important. And I'd say there are some countries that are debating that, but there are a lot of countries that are not. But I also think it's important not to lose sight of the the end game here, the overall goal, what we're both trying to achieve together. And the Sony attack certainly was something that highlighted this, but other threats have been out there too. We've seen all kinds of technical threats, and we can go into great detail about all kinds of threats that we're seeing and how those threats are growing and how they're affecting us. But we're also seeing significant policy threats. And what I mean by that is that there are countries, more repressive regimes, who think the open internet is a threat to them. It's a threat to their stability. When they talk about cybersecurity, they use the term information security. They want to control the flow of information. They want to control dissidents. They don't want criticism of their governments. They want to really draw barriers, sovereign barriers around their cyberspace. And that has a fundamental impact on all of our lives and the future of this technology, and whether it will continue to be something that promotes the kind of social and economic growth and innovation that it has in the past, or whether you'll have a fragmented internet that really serves these states' purposes. And that's really what's at stake. And I think we have to work together, and it's really important for us to work together to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that's where I think all of us come in, and why it's important for us to have discussions like this, because we really do believe we can address privacy and security together. We think those are both important, and they're not either or, you can have both. And if we want the internet to continue to be this engine of growth, we have to be able to have both and really work together to do it, because it's under challenge in the world. You've seen articles, you've seen a lot of stories about clamping down the internet, clamping down on users' use of the internet in some countries, and that's, I think, a real challenge. And John Podesta was here in Berlin just after he did his big data study, which talked about some of the benefits and challenges of big data, which is another topic we can talk about, and I was honored to be with him when we had our dialogue with Germany just last year. And that was a really good dialogue, and we want to continue that as well. So I'll stop there. I'm interested in hearing what all of you think. There's so much we can talk about here that we can probably have this session till tomorrow morning, but we don't have that much time.
5 minutes. We're going to pick up some of your remarks later during the discussion on the panel. But please, Mr. Mascolo, your introductory remarks.
Yeah, I think I can be short because I just learned 10 minutes ago that I was supposed to come up with an opening statement, which I haven't prepared. I think it makes perfectly sense because I don't have any good answers for you anyway, but I want to share some of the questions and the thoughts I have. We talk a lot about the open and secure internet. I think what we all have learned and understood that a secure internet doesn't exist at all. I mean, what does it tell us when a regime in North Korea, if it's true, were able to hack into the computers of a world company like Sony and dump thousands of emails? I would say this means that that security today for most companies almost doesn't exist. What does it tell us when we know from the Snowden revelations that we don't have a common standard even in the West how to protect privacy of people? So what we have is traditionally that communication is protected in the country you're living in. So if you're German, you're protected by German law. If you're an American, you're protected by American law. But traditionally, communication was only under rare circumstances crossing a border, even if you were making a phone call abroad. Today, you can send an email here from Munich to a friend in Munich, and it might go around the world. So who will intercept it? The American, the Indian, the Chinese, who might be there in the future? So we don't have any common standards for privacy. Then we talk about the open internet. Do we want an open internet which can be used by a terrorist organization like ISIS, for example? So for the first time in history, you have a terroristic organization who don't have to rely on the media, on the traditional media, to broadcast. They can do it themselves. So is this the openness of the internet we are really looking for? I haven't seen in my life a technology which is changing our life so fundamentally and so rapidly. And I think we will see a dynamic in the future. So changes will be even bigger than we have seen it now. And we have only a very few good answers for all this. We don't even have a framework in which we try to find this kind of answers. Of course, we have a certain kind of cyber dialogue, and then we talk about no spy agreements or whatever it is here and there. But do we really tackle the tough questions we should? We should, and we have at the West. Do we find a common standard how to protect this technology, which is so important for all of us? I don't know how many of you have an iPhone 6 already. It was good news for users of the iPhone 6 and very good news for all the shareholders of Apple. But as far as I understood, the American government is pretty upset with the new iPhone 6 because it had a kind of encryption standard which gives you a certain guarantee that your communication could be secure, at least more secure than it was in the past. I would say it's a good development for intelligence services or for the FBI, and I understood the FBI director said it openly. This iPhone 6 is a real headache because they say, well, of course it's a good thing to protect the privacy of all of us here in the room, but it shouldn't protect the privacy of those who are terrorists or criminals or whatever. Do we have good answers for all that? I think we even haven't started to tackle all these questions. And more than 1.5 years into this discussion, you know, starting with Snowden and cybersecurity, I would love to see some meaningful changes and a meaningful dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Mascolo, for your words. Let's open the panel for some of the questions at least. We just have about 15 minutes to discuss that before we go on to the audience, to you, take your questions. Mr. Painter, we have heard about the Sony attack. You mentioned it, Mr. Mascolo, also. I wanted to ask, we've seen Sony pull out the movie after the threats and after the threats of people being attacked in the movies, after all those embarrassing emails going around. Do you think that we are already in a stage when we just stick at that point when they were pulling this video out of the movies, that we already get into patterns that our behavior is changed by hackers? And is that a real threat? Not only the financial credentials, not only the data theft and all that, but what does it do to society? And what does that do to young people when they see that they withdraw, that they be defensive, that they step back? Is that something we really have to fight to combat?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it was really a demonstration that these cyber attacks are not just in the cyber world, they have a physical effect, because there were threats there too. There were threats to theater owners and to people going to the movies. There were physical threats combined with the attempt to keep freedom of expression from happening, and a cyber attack. And so you had all those things come together in kind of a perfect storm, I think. And I think it did make it clear to people that this is a real concern. But I don't think, and this is where the president, when he talked about this, said we're not going to be intimidated. We can't allow those kind of attacks to keep us.
Yeah, that's what the president said. Well, but what did Sony do first thing?
But what happened? The movie did come out, and it's available everywhere, I think, now. So it's widely available. And I think there was a recognition that you can't allow these kinds of activities to undermine our core values. You can't make them change our lives. It does mean we have to do a lot of things. We have to be much better at protecting our networks, and there's a lot of things domestically in the United States that are doing this. There are things in Germany as well. We need to have good procedures in place. We need to have resiliency. We have to have businesses take this very seriously. We need to have governments take it very seriously. We have to work with each other. We have to have these response mechanisms, absolutely. But we also have to make sure that in this new world where we're so dependent on these on networks and computer systems, that we don't let it change our lives. And this is also one of the reasons why there's such a focus on critical infrastructure, such a worry that if there's a hacker who tried to take down take down the electric grid or the financial system, that could really have major impact, including physical impact in a country. And so those are things we need to protect. We also need to be able to respond to and work together to respond to.
I absolutely agree with what you say. I just wanted to stress once more that the first action was to take it out.
Yeah.
And is this signal, it was controlled later on, it was, we have had all those governmental statements that it was finally in the movies. But the first thing, is this a reaction? Do you feel that we will see that more often if there are more threats like that?
Actually, I think what we saw play out means you won't see that reaction next time. And I think part of the worry here was there was a worry about physical violence. And so once I think that was put into context, I think that's when they went forward. So I think the demonstration, if it did coming out, of not being cowed by this activity, ultimately sends a strong message. I think ultimately that does get beyond that.
Mr. Binninger, are you worried that criminals are studying our behavior quite well and that they see that absolutely intimidation could be possible by threats like that?
Also ich glaube nicht nur, dass wir vor Kriminellen ja jetzt Angst haben. Wir wissen ja überhaupt nicht, woher die Bedrohung kommt. Wer weiß über unsere Daten Bescheid? Wer hat die Verfügungsgewalt über diese Daten? Und je mehr Daten an einer Stelle gesammelt werden, desto mächtiger ist diese Stelle. Darüber müssen wir uns bewusst sein. Die weiß dann im Zweifel sehr viel über uns, wie wir leben, was wir konsumieren, wo wir hinreisen und kann danach, das wäre noch der positive Aspekt, versuchen, Produkte zu platzieren. Ja? Das, was früher Marktforschung war, war heute dann sehr viel mehr in Echtzeit. Aber was ist, wenn Sie angegriffen werden, wenn es einen Identitätsdiebstahl gibt, was wir alle schon erleben, dass Ihre Identität komplett gestohlen wird, ja? Mit Ihren richtigen Namen, Ihrer richtigen Adresse, mit Ihrer richtigen Kreditkartennummer und dann wird in Ihrem Namen werden Geschäfte gemacht oder werden Dinge gekauft oder wird das Konto überzogen. Das ist ein echtes Problem. Oder Sie können gar nicht mehr erkennen, wenn Sie zu Hause sitzen an Ihrem Rechner und Sie surfen auf irgendeiner beliebigen Homepage, einer seriösen Seite, vielleicht Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz. Und ein versierter Hacker kann Ihnen diese Seite spiegeln. Sie wissen gar nicht, dass Sie auf der falschen Seite sind und mit jedem Klick laden Sie sich etwas herunter. Sie kriegen eine E-Mail 2 Tage später von Georg Mascolo. Ich denke, ja, ich war mit ihm zusammen auf dem Podium. Aber es muss nicht Georg Mascolo sein. Auch das alles haben wir heute schon an Bedrohungsszenarien, sodass es sehr, sehr schwer ist, sich dagegen zu schützen. Andererseits aber auch wieder fast schon ein bisschen kaum zu glauben, wie wenig wir uns schützen. Es wäre schon viel geholfen, wenn jeder User seinen Rechner, wenigstens die Antivirensoftware, die nicht alles abfängt, auf dem neuesten Stand wäre. Wenn Unternehmen eine Firewall hätten. Wenn man E-Mails, deren Absender man nicht kennt, auch nicht öffnet, auch nicht aus Neugier, wenn man seine Daten sparsamer weitergibt, wenn man genau weiß, was man damit tut, all das muss zusammenwirken. Die Sicherheitsbehörden werden nicht alleine in der Lage sein, den Schutz der Privatsphäre zu gewährleisten. Ohne den Nutzer und sein kluges Verhalten wird es nicht gehen. Und da habe ich ja eingangs gesagt, aber tatsächlich ist, glaube ich, das Nutzerverhalten getrieben von Geschäftsmodellen. Von Innovation, wenn es etwas Neues gibt, dann werden eben Daten eingesetzt, weil es so viel Spaß macht. Ja, der Siegeszug der Apps, wissen Sie, wer hinter dieser App steht, wenn Sie sich eine runterladen? Oder warum dann ausgerechnet Angry Bird immer wissen muss, wo ihr Standort ist? Ich glaube, das war das Beispiel mit Angry Bird. Also Sie sehen, es kommt aus vielen Richtungen, kann Gefahr drohen. Kriminalität hat zugenommen, die klassische Cyberkriminalität, und da stehen wir vor dem Problem, dass wir anders als bei anderen Kriminalitätsfällen eben kein vernünftiges Lagebild haben. Wir können nicht sagen, das sind die und die Gruppen, die kommen aus dem Bereich, wir kennen die Namen, wir kennen die Hintermänner, da wissen wir noch viel, viel zu wenig, und da bin ich auch sehr dafür, dass wir uns mehr international zusammentun müssten, weil die Bedrohungsarten und die Möglichkeiten, meine Daten zu stehlen, sind überall die gleichen. Das Betriebssystem, das auf unseren Rechnern läuft, läuft auch auf den Rechnern der amerikanischen Bürger. Wer das Betriebssystem hier knacken kann, kann es auch in den USA knacken. Ja, und deshalb müssten wir da gemeinsame Strategien entwickeln. Da stehen wir sicher ganz, ganz am Anfang. Aber nochmal, ohne den Nutzer wird es auch nicht gehen. Und je sorgloser der Nutzer, desto mehr hinken wir hinterher mit Sicherheit. Und der Nutzer ist auch die Wirtschaft, die vielleicht natürlich auch getrieben vom Geschäftsmodell Sicherheitsinteressen ab und zu zurückstellt, was dann verheerende Wirkung haben kann Da spricht der BDI vom Schadensvolumen von 50 Milliarden pro Jahr in Deutschland durch Industriespionage, Cyberspionage oder durch Angriffe, durch den Ausfall von Homepages, von Produktionsstätten, was auch immer.
General Hodges, the use of social media, the use of computers, the use of personal data, what did the Cyber Command, what did the Central Command soldiers maybe do wrong? Because the social media were hacked and some people say not too much sensitive information, but at least some sensitive information was published by Cyber Caliphate recently. We've seen that all over the place as well. Some threats that were really worrying, like we know everything about you, we know where your wives are, we know where your children are. Did those soldiers do something wrong in using the social media? What was the problem there?
Part of the security, our protection against all forms of cyber attack boils down to individual responsibility, just like it does to drive on the Autobahn. Individual responsibility is a part of that. So to operate, to take advantage of the freedom of the internet, there's a degree of individual responsibility because we are connected. And so when one person fails, makes a mistake, it can have an impact on everybody else. We have a tension in the military all of the time because the use of social media is so pervasive that it is such a common thing now that soldiers and families use social media to communicate even when they're deployed in Afghanistan or Liberia or anywhere, to communicate back to their families. So we're definitely vulnerable there. So for this tension exists to protect military operations, to protect the government, you put restrictions on soldiers on when they can and can't take certain things with them. One of the ways that we know that Russia has put soldiers into Crimea and into eastern Ukraine, even though they have denied it, is because Russian soldiers are on social media posting pictures of themselves and their vehicles and their unit moving through Crimea. So it's the same challenge for us. The other part, and the reason this is serious, is because exactly what you highlighted, Sabina, so much of warfare is psychological. And so the enemies of your country, my country, will use every opportunity to influence how we think. It's what terror is all about. And so if you can influence how soldiers think by threatening their families, making them feel vulnerable, then it takes their focus off of what their mission is, what their task is, what they should be doing. So protecting social media is an important part of that. When we talk about how national power is used, there's diplomatic power, information power, military power, and economic power, DIME. So information power is one of the most important elements of a nation's ability to influence.
Yeah, let's take the information power, Mr. Mascolo. Information power, that's also media. And do we see a risk that self-censorship might be in our journalistic heads because of some of the attacks we've seen in the past?
Journalistic censorship?
It's pre-censorship. Like, we won't publish this because we are afraid. We will not use certain media because this could be hacked. Or does it change our behavior?
No, I don't see this development. We started this round here with North Korea and the Sony movie. I mean, what was the result of this pretty stupid cyber attack? What I did with my 19-year-old girls on Christmas Eve is we bought the movie for $5.99 and looked it, as millions of people all over the world did it. this movie probably got a larger and a bigger audience than was usually had. So hopefully the next state who might be embarrassed by a movie will think twice before coming up with the idea of hacking a movie company. Do we see a changing of behavior? I mean, look at this audience here, a lot of young people, and my best guess would be that all of them have understood that they're using a real gift from the United States, because this is the internet, but they all understood that it is fundamentally unsecure, and then you can come up with certain layers to protect your communication, but it will probably be a dream to have real secure communication. What is really changing, this is what I'm seeing, is the behavior of companies and states. So if you're a British or an American company today and you want to make business with the German government, you have to sign what they call in the German government a no-spy agreement. This is a level of mistrust we have never seen. If you're a German customer and you don't want to see your communication leaving Germany, at least if you're communicating only inside Germany, you can buy it at 1&1 and Deutsche Telekom. They sell it to you. They call it Schengen routing or German routing. Clemens Binninger is too polite to say so I will do it. But if they're using their encrypted cell phones today in Berlin, they did it a couple of years ago, if they did so, when they parsed the Russian embassy and they thought, well, we have a certain suspicion if our communication will be true. Today the same is true when they go along the American embassy. So you see a lot of mistrust and a lot of changes from all those who really have to protect their communication. This is mostly governments and companies.
You mentioned the companies and what changes for company daily life, and because of cyber threats, there's a new law on the way, a cyber law, and you would like to have companies cooperate and tell about breaches, tell about what happened, tell about the way the breach was fulfilled, and maybe you can tell us, is there a reluctancy on the side of the economy because they say, oh, this is our secrets, we don't want to talk with the government about that. What do you see?
Well, I think it's changed over time, because I think there was a time, especially in the early days, where companies did not want to report data breaches or other issues to the government because, first, they didn't know that the government could actually do anything for them, and second, they were afraid of it, affecting their bottom line, embarrassment, et cetera, or that they'd be further victimized because if law enforcement came in, they would somehow tear out their servers or do something like that. I think that dynamic has changed incredibly, and I do think that one of the proposals, legislative proposals in the U.S., is to have the data breach reporting law. And that helps protect consumers, but ultimately it means that they can also report it to law enforcement so investigation can be done to help prevent things like the use of stolen information, personally identifiable information that hackers or others are stealing. And so that's, I think, very important. The other parts of this are, this new framework that we've created in the U.S., this out of our National Institute of Standards and Technology, working with our critical infrastructure, is not a regulatory framework, but is a voluntary set of frameworks that is flexible, which over time I think will raise the standard of care for all the industries, and I think that's helpful. And there's a summit that's taking place the President is hosting in Stanford in about a week, where a number of companies and government is coming together to discuss just these issues. So I think there's been more of an imperative that companies understand that this is really could be damaging. It's not something they're just going to write off and say, well, we have a big loss here, we'll write it off. You've seen changes in behavior of companies, and I think that's useful. Is it important to build that partnership? Absolutely. And just to address one thing that you mentioned, I do think if you try to react and try to create security by creating things like local clouds and things like that, that really denies the global nature of this technology and the global nature of how these things work. And I've heard companies respond to some of those things at a high level and say, well, we're global companies, that just doesn't work for us, and it doesn't make sense for us to do that. So I think there are ways to think about how you can have security, but at the same time, not create trade barriers, not create local systems that actually may not actually serve security and might hurt you economically too. So I think you have to look at all of those things. And part of that is talking to industry about how you go forward with this.
That's something new in the society, and we also see it in Germany, don't we, Mr. Binninger? There's the security, cybersecurity law on the way, and you've been mentioning the coming new law in Germany. Do you see on the company side, it's something totally different. We don't have had something like that before. Companies are a bit reluctant because they fear about the privacy of the data and everything. Is this something new that we have to face under the cyber threat we've seen so many times now, that there must be more cooperation between the different partners in a society, that they have to play together more?
Das Gesetz wird ja verabschiedet werden, voraussichtlich im Sommer diesen Jahres. Es hat zwei zentrale Elemente. Zum einen werden die Betreiber kritischer Infrastrukturen, also Finanzdienstleistungen, Energieversorger, Verkehrseinrichtungen, werden verpflichtet, einen gewissen Mindeststandard für die Sicherheit ihrer Daten zu halten. Das wird auch überprüft. Und die zweite Säule des Gesetzes heißt, wenn ihr einen schweren Cyberangriff, eine Cyberattacke habt, schwer heißt, es muss die Funktionsfähigkeit beeinträchtigt sein, also keine Spam-E-Mail oder ähnliches, sondern einen schweren Angriff, der die Funktionsfähigkeit des Energieversorgers oder des Rechenzentrums beeinträchtigt, müsst ihr diesen Zwischenfall melden an das Bundesamt für Sicherheit in Informationstechnik. Allerdings wird das anonymisiert und im direkten Kontakt, sodass der Firmenname dann hinterher im Lagebild nicht erscheint. Damit kann die Industrie durchaus leben, und wir erleben bei der Industrie und bei der Wirtschaft zweierlei. Einerseits sind sie sich bewusst, dass sie viel mehr tun müssen und haben vielleicht die ganz großen Unternehmen sicher nicht, die sich große eigene IT-Abteilungen leisten. Da, glaube ich, sind die auf gutem Stand. Aber wir haben ja viele mittelständische Unternehmen in der Größenordnung von 100 bis 1500 Mitarbeitern oder mehr. Sie wissen, sie müssen mehr tun, haben natürlich ein bisschen Bedenken, dass wenn wir jetzt es gesetzlich verpflichtend machen, dass Bürokratie oder eben, wie Frau Painter gesagt hat, ein Image-Schaden einhergeht. Aber da legen wir stark Wert darauf, dass das genau nicht passiert. Aber darauf verzichten können wir auf keinen Fall. Es kann jetzt durchaus sein, dass es in den letzten Monaten organisierte Cyberattacken gab auf ganz sensible Bereiche unserer Wirtschaft, es aber niemand erfahren hat, weil das Unternehmen es selber entdeckt, versucht, den Schaden zu bewältigen, nachvollziehbar, und dann aber nicht darüber redet, weil es ein Image-Schaden wäre. Stellen Sie sich vor, ein Versicherer oder wer auch immer, eine große Bank, würde in die Öffentlichkeit gehen und sagen, leider wurde unser Rechenzentrum gehackt, 10.000 Kundendaten sind weg. Macht ja im Normalfall keiner. Aber wir wiederum müssen wissen, was waren es für Attacken? Wie können wir uns besser darauf vorbereiten? Haben die alle das gleiche Muster? Hat sich die Attacke geändert? Gibt es neue Angriffsformen? Und die erfahren wir eben nur so. Und deshalb brauchen wir diese Zusammenarbeit. Wir müssen sie jetzt gesetzlich regeln, weil das, was wir in der Vergangenheit gemacht haben, das war eher so auf kooperativer Gesprächsbasis. Das war auch gut, aber hat uns am Ende immer vor das Problem gestellt, dass wir eigentlich nicht wissen, wie sieht die tatsächliche Cyberbedrohungslage in Deutschland aus oder in Europa. Wie sehen die Angriffe tatsächlich aus? Und man konzentriert sich dann immer auf die gleichen Beispiele, wo es mir persönlich unwohl ist, wenn wir immer noch von 3, 4 Zwischenfällen reden, aber nicht von dem, was vielleicht dahinter passiert.
We see, yeah, please.
Can I just add one thing on the
Mr.
legislative? So I talked about the data breach legislation, which I think mirrors some of what you were talking about, but also another part of this is information sharing legislation, which creates a portal at our Department of Homeland Security and encourages these companies to share information with the government. And the problem before is that there's always been a good reason from the government's perspective to get that information, but the companies didn't see a good business reason to do it, and they saw hurdles in the way. And so this is giving them some limited liability protection, some other protections, so there's no longer the hurdles, and they have a real incentive to share it because there are things the government can help them with. So that's the kind of dynamic you have to create. We create it a little differently than Germany, but I think having that framework is important.
From a journalistic perspective, Mr. Mascolo, we've seen so many breaches, and we have had very little information on how much data and especially who was affected by that, like employees or customers. From a journalistic perspective, do you think that along with this new law, there should be much more information on how it was affected?
On how the information is used?
Yeah, you can't say that after the breach right away, I guess, but you can at least you could at least inform the person which data had been stolen from. If the data was stolen, we don't get so much information on that. We don't read about that in the press. Would that be something from a media perspective you would say we have to have more information on that?
I think this is part of the cyber dialogue we already have, and this is one of the reasons why there is no industry which is spending so much lobby money already in Brussels as Silicon Valley is, because they fear meaningful data protection by European standards. This could include, for example, that data collected from Europeans is only stored in Europe, and if there's a cyber attack, to answer your question, and information is stolen, that you have to be informed, and so on and so on. We don't have, I come back to that, we don't have a common standard on data protection, how it should be used, for which purposes it can be used in Europe and in the United States. The whole Snowden revelations have made things worse. We are more than 1.5 years now into discussion how to solve and how to find a common standard, but I see only little progress.
You've heard that, Mr. Binninger.
Ja, es gibt die große Debatte um die europäische Datenschutzverordnung, wo in der Tat die Schritte nur langsam und klein sind. Und die ideale Lösung des Problems wäre, aber da bin ich Realist, wenn wir einen weltweiten einheitlichen Standard hätten für Sicherheit von Kommunikation, für Sicherheit von Daten im Internet. Ja? Wobei die Gefahr immer ist, dass wenn wir diesen Standard erreichen, wir uns nicht am höchsten Datenschutzniveau orientieren, das wir wahrscheinlich in Deutschland haben, sondern eher am mittleren oder eher etwas unteren Level, da möglicherweise nicht mal etwas gewonnen wäre für die unmittelbare Sicherheit. Aber es muss diese Kooperation geben, weil die Kommunikation im Netz heute, Georg Mascolo hat es vorhin ja gesagt, grenzenlos ist. Sie macht eben auch nicht an Grenzen Halt. Eine E-Mail, die Sie versenden, geht einmal um den halben Erdball, auch wenn sie nur nach Hamburg geht. Und wenn dann auf dieser Strecke, und das ist ja der Punkt, um Ihre E-Mail abzufangen, muss man nicht bei Ihnen am Rechner sein. Man muss auch nicht beim Empfänger am Rechner sein. Es reicht irgendwo auf der Strecke, wo die E-Mail über Internetnetzknoten läuft, dort zuzugreifen. Und da E-Mail-Verkehr sich nicht nach der kürzesten Strecke richtet, sondern nach der schnellsten und billigsten, kann dieser Internetknoten überall sein und damit auch außerhalb unserer Möglichkeiten. Und deshalb ist es so schwer, das zu schützen. Und ich will einen Punkt, weil wir da bisher gar nicht drüber geredet haben, aber ein bisschen müssen wir auch selbstkritisch, glaube ich, das ansprechen. Neben der Gefahr von Big Data und dem Datensammeln und dass je mehr Daten an einer Stelle konzentriert sind, desto mehr Macht vorhanden ist, natürlich auch das ein interessantes Ziel ist für Angriffe, hat Sicherheit von Kommunikation auch mit Vertrauen zu tun. Und dass natürlich das Vertrauen in die Sicherheit leidet, wenn Nachrichtendienste wirklich mit dem großen Schleppnetz alles einfangen, in der Hoffnung, daraus hinterher eine Spur zu generieren. Das ist auch eine Strategie, die ich persönlich auch in der Sache für falsch halte, weil sie viel zu viel Aufwand produziert, weil sie mit dem Datenschutz nicht vereinbar ist und weil sie Misstrauen sät. Sie haben ja jetzt mittlerweile auch häufig, wenn Sie in Berlin telefonieren mit dem Handy, der zweite Satz heißt dann aber nicht am Telefon, was so schlecht nicht ist. Man sollte immer überlegen, was man wo spricht. Aber da müssen wir uns selber selbstkritisch auch den Spiegel vorhalten, dass natürlich Sicherheit vieles notwendig macht, aber wenn eben Nachrichtendienste wahllos alles möchten, entsteht ein so großes Misstrauen, dass sich dann hinterher wieder auch auf unser Verhalten, und Sie haben ja vorhin gefragt, ob wir unser Verhalten dann ändern, darauf eben auswirkt. Und das müssen wir auch uns eingestehen, dass wir für unsere Sicherheit auch Daten brauchen von Terrorverdächtigen. Von denen bräuchten wir alles, wohin sie reisen, mit wem sie telefonieren, wohin das Geld fließt. Wir brauchen aber nicht die Daten von allen für alles.
Thank you very much. I want to pose two last questions, one to Mr. Painter and one to General Hodges, because I think it's very important, because you mentioned, it was mentioned in the introductory statements, the critical infrastructure. You said our critical infrastructure is partly not secure. Some experts say, whether it's Germany or the United States, it's vulnerable, and also it's infected by malware already. I would like to know about your intelligence and information on how bad the situation really is.
So before I answer that question, just on the last point, I think the important thing is to have interoperable regimes for data privacy. You're never going to have a uniform one, I think, and they have to be interoperable for commercial and other reasons as well. I also think that you talk about the threat of big data, but we also have to think about the benefits of big data too, and the challenges. And I think that we need to look at those together. And I think that's important, not just for the US, but for Germany and others as well. And you're quite right. You need to get access to data to protect our citizens. And we've seen that just recently. But that means you have to have the right kind of procedures and oversight in place. And that's what I was stressing earlier. On your point, look, I think we've been very concerned for many, many years about, as infrastructure becomes much more dependent on these, what we used to call SCADA systems, supervisory control and access
remote
systems.
Controls.
That essentially are remote controls for power grids, for the financial sector, et cetera, that we're concerned that there are vulnerabilities there that could be attacked by hackers. They could take those offline or have some catastrophic effect. We haven't really seen that. But what that does is it means that I think it does heighten the need to take better protective measures, to have regimes in place at a national level, but also have the kind of international cooperation. I do think, I wouldn't believe movies you see where everything gets torn down. I think that those hype these things a lot. Just like when you see headlines about cyber war all the time, I think that hypes it a bit too. But I do think it's a real risk. I think that there's a real risk that can happen. It's an asymmetric threat. You don't need a lot of capability to cause problems. But I would submit you need a lot more capability to have systemic long-term effects. And one of the things, because of the interdependencies in the world, I don't see, because we're also interdependent, I don't see nation states absent actual shooting war launching that kind of attack.
Yeah,
I think we have to be worried about it, and I think we have to be worried about rogue groups and others, and I think we have to take all the defensive measures we talked about and have these cooperative measures in place too. The good news is I think that people are taking it more seriously.
General Hodges, we haven't seen something like a real attack on critical infrastructure in the Western world, although it's possible. That's what we read all the time, all the infections already there. Why haven't we seen it? Thanks God we haven't, but why didn't we have? And also, I would like to know, is the physical warfare something from yesterday, and would it be nowadays combined with the cyber attacks? So is that an even, does it give more importance to look deeply into how our infrastructure is protected today?
Let me make 3 points. First, I don't completely agree with my fellow panelists that there's such a lack of trust. For sure, trust between Germany and the United States took a setback. But I think that my personal experience between the German Army, the American Army, inside NATO, we are constantly sharing information. We are all on the same networks. The Chief of Staff for U.S. Army Europe is a German Brigadier General. First time in 70 years that we've had a non-American have a German officer as a Chef de Stabes for the U.S. Army Europe. So he is in our operations center. He sees everything. So there's what a wonderful manifestation of the trust that he is responsible for everything that our headquarters does in Europe. So that's an example, but I think it's important to keep in mind that there's no German trust any American, that everybody here just assumes that I'm right now, while you're on your BlackBerry, that it's being hoovered up into my office somewhere and I'm going to be able to see what you've been typing. First of all, I'm not terribly interested in what you might be typing. So it's harmful, I think, to dwell so much on the mistrust, but that's okay. The second thing I would say is part of the reason we have not seen a massive Hollywood-style shutdown in an entire country is because it is difficult. Most nations have implemented, I think, varying levels of effective safeguards. They're not perfect. I mean, sure, everybody in here probably receives an advertisement that you didn't want to get. So, I mean, you can always penetrate at some point, but to achieve a catastrophic shutdown is probably pretty difficult given the degree of protections that are in place and also the cooperation between nations. I mean, one nation can't build a wall around itself because the internet is, in fact, so interconnected. Estonia obviously suffered a severe attack. They have a very good center of excellence. Some of you may have been there in Tallinn, the NATO Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. They do exercises every year called Locked Shield, where they put systems up and then invite people to try to attack the system so they can continue to develop that. So I think that's an important example of how the Alliance is working to build, retain trust, as well as protect our systems. Because you remember I said at the beginning, none of us are going to do anything by ourselves. And then finally, it's clear that what Russia is doing, what President Putin is doing in Ukraine, is a combination of cyber and classic conventional kinetic use of rockets, artillery, tanks, things that have been going on forever, although at a level of sophistication and violence that we haven't seen perhaps in a long time. But that's combined with a cyber that makes it very, very difficult for Ukrainian security forces to even talk on the radio or use things. So the level of attack that they are undergoing is so severe, and it's impossible that that could be done by militia. Only from a sophisticated professional military would have the ability to do that.
Just one thing to add to the point I made earlier, and what the General said. There's also diplomatic things we're doing, which are more long-term. So one of the things that we've been promoting is what are the, absent a big armed conflict, which is a pretty high bar, and that you don't see that very often. We haven't really seen it. Are there sort of rules of the road? Are there norms of behavior we want to promote below that? Things like not attacking certain targets, critical infrastructure, for instance, having a duty to cooperate between us. So those are things where we can get more of a like-minded group of countries, a Big Tent like-minded group of countries over time to agree to that, and that makes all of us more stable. That really helps prevent these things in the long term. And then things we call confidence-building measures, which is just transparency measures. A lot of countries don't trust each other in cyberspace for lots of different reasons, because of attribution and other reasons. Build more confidence and transparency, exchange doctrine, have hotlines, have points of contact, not rocket science, but things that then would build to cooperative measures, which build more trust and ultimately more stability measures. So there are long-term diplomatic efforts coupled with the things we're doing to protect our own systems and the other policies we have in place.
So let's the audience include here on the panel with your questions, please. My colleague Hendrik is ready. Hendrik Loven will take your questions. Please,
and
Hendrik.
we got already questions by Twitter, but first, do you have questions? Do you want to address your questions directly via microphone? Please just raise your hand or stand up. Okay.
So there's some questions here on your right side.
So I will take, please introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Okay, so thank you. My name is Simon. I'm from Munich, a political science student. I have a question for Mr. Hodges. The NSA, well, after the reports of Snowden and everything, if you talk to, let's say, eggheads at a university, physicists, or even people working for the Max Planck Institution, they all said that the technology is light years ahead of what they thought it would be. So how can you tame such a powerful institution by legislation? Or how can you tame such an institution? How can you tame it?
But it's a fair point, and I think the concern that we all have is that even if information is collected up massively or small amounts, and it's held by the government, what happens to that? What guarantee do you have that that information is not going to be used for something else? Yeah, I think that is a legitimate concern. I have that concern. Of course, I have been paying my taxes for years and years and years before we had computers, and so I was providing very sensitive information to the government then also, before the internet. So the responsibility of government to protect the trust that's been placed in it by the citizens is not a new requirement. I think in the United States, one of the ways that we have tried to tame that very powerful capability is through congressional oversight. You know, we have intelligence committees and other committees in the Congress that have a responsibility to keep a watch over the intelligence agencies, for example. If they do not do their job properly, if they are not aggressive enough, then sometimes if the oversight fails and you have someone who is violating the law or operating outside of the official authorization, then you have exactly the experience that you talked about. So congressional oversight is probably one of the most important ways that we try to do that.
And I just say that there's, the president announced a number of things, including substantial, strengthening the FISA court's role and asking the FISA court for particular direction in certain cases, and this is an independent court. But the way what the president said a year ago is he said, just because you have the capability to do something doesn't mean you should do it necessarily. And so that's what all the focus of the various reforms and discussion have been. How do you make sure that oversight works? How do you make sure it's a proper purpose, there's transparency, et cetera? That's really what democratic societies do. That's not what a lot of societies around the world do, however.
If I may add one thing?
Mr. Mascolo, you want to answer to that question?
Let me add one thing about the NSA. Every German politician who knows a little bit about security would tell you that Germany is relying on American intelligence and on the NSA to protect this country, the same way they are relying on American military power. So it's true that under many circumstances, the NSA on any given day is doing a lot of things to protect the security of German people and European people. Since 2013, the German government has delivered more than 200 names from those who are going to Syria and Iraq from Germany to the NSA, asking them for help, asking them to control their communication. The bad thing with the NSA is what we have all learned is that on one hand, they're helping to protect this country and they cooperate, but they do a lot of other things, which we wouldn't consider to be friendly. The Chancellor probably wasn't very much amused by the revelations, and many other people as well. What the President guaranteed in his speech more than a year ago was an unprecedented step that the Americans, because they have this unprecedented power electronically, would give other people in the world certain guarantees under which circumstances their communication will be intercepted or will be protected. Something no other country has. So under German law, for example, we are all protected, but nobody else in the world is. We were all waiting for this guarantee for these changes in American law, which we have seen this week. And I have to say, they have fallen short of my expectations. I thought that the guarantees for foreigners would be more broad, more understandable. I understood, but Chris is the expert here, that after 5 years, my communication as a foreigner might get destroyed in NSA computers if it's useless, anyway. And if it's useless communication intercepted by the NSA and I'm an American person, it will get destroyed immediately. So it brings me back to my point. I would love to see a common Western standard to protect communication. And I have to say, I believe that we are sharing so many things in this world, the Western world. You know, we protect each other by our military. We share a same vision of how our people should live, what liberty is, what security is, that I simply don't understand that there should be exceptions for all this in the electronic arena and in the world of espionage. I believe what you're destroying with that is much worse than what you gain, on the other hand, in terms of intelligence.
Do you want to answer that?
Well, and I just say that every country around the world, and has for all time, will conduct intelligence, will collect intelligence to protect its people and to protect its allies too, quite frankly. And there's been a lot of good that's come out of that, and especially in terrorism and other cases. And that's really important. That's why, it's not do you conduct intelligence operations at all or not, or how do you do it? It's really, what is the oversight mechanism? What's the transparency? And you said you were not, it didn't live up to your expectations, what's happened so far. But if you look at the report that DNI issued, it said we are still seeking some additional changes. This conversation is not over. We haven't checked the box and moved on and said that's it. This is a continuing conversation, and it's a conversation with our legislature because we also need to pass some laws, and so there's some legislation that's being sought too. So this doesn't change in an instant. It doesn't change overnight, but there's been really not just signal change, but actual change in the past year. And again, I don't pretend to be an expert in all of this stuff. Actually, I'm much more of an expert in all the cyber issues that we were talking about, but I would commend you to read the DNI report that just came out.
Mr. Binninger, you just wanted to add something, right?
Ja, Herr Painter, lassen Sie uns doch konkret werden. Der Streit, den wir haben in der Sache hier, neben der klaren Erkenntnis, dass wir einander brauchen, und wir brauchen die amerikanischen Sicherheitsbehörden auch für unsere Sicherheit. Und ich lege größten Wert darauf, dass BND und NSA gut zusammenarbeiten. Da haben wir überhaupt keinen Dissens. Wir haben einen gemeinsamen Gegner, der unsere Werte bedroht. Da gibt es keinen Dissens. Aber wenn wir herausarbeiten wollen, warum wir einen haben, müssen wir konkret werden. Und der konkrete Punkt für mich ist, brauchen wir, um unsere Sicherheit aufrechtzuerhalten, wirklich so viel Daten wie möglich von jedem, nur für den Fall, dass wir sie vielleicht in 5 Jahren mal brauchen könnten? Dann bin ich auf einer schiefen Ebene, wo es kaum Grenzen gibt. Oder sollten wir uns nicht auf die Daten konzentrieren, von denen, wo wir wissen, es besteht Terrorverdacht, es sind Foreign Fighters, die sind unterwegs in diese Krisenregion Irak, Syrien, sie kommen wieder zurück. Und von denen muss ich dann alles wissen. Da muss ich wirklich ein transparentes Bild haben. Und um diese Personen herauszufiltern, würden Sie mir jetzt sagen, ja, deshalb muss ich die großen Datenströme ja durchsuchen. Woher soll ich sie sonst finden? Ja, auch noch einverstanden. Aber wenn Sie die gefunden haben, gibt es für mich persönlich keine zwingende Notwendigkeit zu sagen, alles andere muss ich auch speichern. Wir sind uns einig, dass wir uns über die Flugpassagiere austauschen müssen, ja, um zu wissen, wo steigt eine gefährliche Person in ein Flugzeug. Und zwar schon vorher, bevor sie das Flugzeug betreten hat, logischerweise. Und da tauschen wir Daten aus. Sie erhalten, die amerikanischen Sicherheitsbehörden, Daten von europäischen Fluggesellschaften. Und jetzt versuchen wir, die Regeln zu übertragen auf Europa. Aber müssen wir dazu 19 Merkmale erheben von den Passagieren? 19? Oder würden nicht ein paar weniger Daten reichen? Muss ich sie dafür 7, 8 oder 10 Jahre speichern oder würden vielleicht nicht auch 3 Jahre reichen? Es muss doch immer darum gehen, dass wenn wir Datenströme durchforsten, was sicher sein muss, aber am Ende das Ziel haben müssen, die gefährlichen Personen zu identifizieren und nicht einfach zu sagen, lasst uns den Berg an Daten so groß wie möglich machen, er wird schon irgendwann nutzen. Das ist unser Dissens, glaube ich. Das ist der einzige. Und ich habe vorhin, Herr General, keinen bestimmten Nachrichtendienst genannt. Ich habe gesagt, das ist die Selbstkritik, der wir uns alle stellen müssen, wenn wir gleichzeitig auch Vertrauen erhalten wollen.
I'm very sure that there is a lot of controversial debates between two countries to come. And we stop at that point, this question. Hendrik, please, is there another question from the audience?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have 2 ladies here. Please, what is your name? Where are you from?
I'm Monica from Munich. I'm Teresa from Regensburg.
And so please ask your question, and for whom is the question, please?
Everybody could answer my question. It's on encryption. Actually, if people more and more decide I have to work for security myself, so I go for encryption because the law possibly doesn't help me, neither the US nor the European law, and more kind of go dark, companies and individuals. Is it a good thing? Should the governments promote it to have really good hard encryption, or is it bad because and what would you do if you decide it's bad? So would you ban encryption, or would you say it's only allowed under certain conditions, like I can decrypt it in case I need it?
For whom is the question?
Give it to Mr. Painter and to Mr. Binninger.
So please keep it in mind because we are collecting questions, and the next question is about cyber warfare, isn't it?
Well, more hybrid warfare. My question goes to General Hodges, and you stated that all 28 nations of the NATO agreed on the Wales summit that the hybrid warfare is a case of Article 5. So when does hybrid warfare start? And the propaganda we've seen in the media coming from Russia, is that already hybrid warfare? When does it start? And when does Article 5 apply? When do you want to interfere? And does the very high readiness task force really help to prevent hybrid warfare?
Thank you very much. I think we just passed this question on to General Hodges. When does Article 5 apply? That's the big question.
That actually is a terrific question, and it is one of the things that was discussed at the Wales Summit, and I am sure it will be discussed again at the Warsaw Summit next year. Hybrid, what I said was the Russians have used hybrid warfare in order to stay just below Article 5. 28 nations, the way the process works, something happens, one nation would turn to the other 27 and say, this has happened, I am invoking Article 5, requesting that the alliance consider this in Article 5. And so then there's a process, and then all 28 nations would have to agree. And of course, the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty was created at a time when there was a Soviet Union with millions of soldiers, nuclear weapons, and the attack, the Article 5 violation was assumed to be something of a classic conventional attack. Tanks coming across the inter-German border, for example, or a nuclear strike that would be an obvious attack. That was Article 5. Now, there is, of course, disagreement about what constitutes Article 5 other than that. And that's the whole purpose of the ambiguity that enemies would want to create. If it's a non-state actor, if it's a terrorist attack to something like ISIL that is not necessarily considered a sovereign state in the Westphalian sense, does that constitute Article 5? Even if you could confirm that a cyber attack came from another country, does that automatically equal Article 5? And right now, I think you would find that at least half of the nations would say no. So that's why the Russian approach to create ambiguity is so dangerous, because it stays at 99 degrees, not 100. It stays at 99, so that it is very difficult for the alliance to act with consensus of 28 nations.
Let me just add this. So it must be fundamental to get more knowledge, to get more intelligence on where the cyber attackers are, where the attacks are coming from. Is this something that is really being forced, is on the way? Because just in combination with that question.
Well, certainly each nation is going to do all that it can to protect itself. And I would imagine that most nations, or many nations, are developing an offensive capability as a deterrent. Much like, there's never been a nuclear war because the Soviets knew that the Allies had nuclear weapons, and vice versa. So perhaps part of the reason we have not had the massive cyber attack, the catastrophic cyber attack, is because eventually you can find out where that attack came from, and then you could perhaps, you're concerned of a retaliatory strike as well. So I think that's an important part of the deterrence.
So I think with respect to Article 5, I think what NATO said, which was important, was that a cyber attack could be an Article 5 attack, but not necessarily would be, and I think that's important to recognize. And it would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. To my knowledge, I'm not an expert on Article 5, but it's only been invoked. Well, it was invoked on 9/11. That was the only time it's been invoked. So, and that's in a physical attack. So, we have to keep that in mind in terms of how Article 5 actually works. The other issue on sort of attribution, this is another long-term effort, is attribution is not just technical attribution. That's the following the hops back. There are other ways to attribute too. In the criminal world, you follow the money. You could look at other things that would tell you who the actor is. So attribution is not impossible in this area. And indeed, we made very clear attribution in North Korea recently, for instance. But one of the things we've also said that applies in international law to cyberspace is that you can't use proxies to do things that you can't do under the normal laws of armed conflict, for instance. So a nation state can't launch an attack using a proxy and trying to hide behind it. Now that's hard to enforce because of the attribution issues, but again, attribution is not an unsolvable puzzle.
Would you just like to go on with the last question we had?
I think this is a debate that's happening in Europe and in the United States too. The president said this just recently, and I think you mentioned this in the opening, that you have two competing things here. Encryption, there's a lot of good things about encryption. I think it was mentioned in Podesta's report as one of the things that could help in terms of security. And what you want to have that kind of security in place, but at the same time, you want to be able to enable lawful law enforcement access. So how can you have both? And that's a discussion I think that's happening between law enforcement and the private sector. There's not an easy solution to that. I think that really has to be discussed. In the old world, it was the way it was done is there were orders that were put in place and there were ways that the providers could do it. As you get to a more decentralized world, that's harder. So it's what the president said just recently is this is an important discussion where we have to be able to get that data to protect our citizens and to prosecute crimes. And I know this from when I was a prosecutor, but at the same time, we have to make sure we safeguard privacy and civil liberties too. So you have to find what the right balance is and what the right structure is.
But let me add for a second two things which are driving this conversation. One is American tech companies, because we are all using them. We are all their customers. Just a couple of weeks ago, Eric Schmidt was in Berlin, and we had, together with Wolfgang Isching, a very interesting and long evening and conversation with him. And he said, my customers are worldwide. So I'm going to invent encryption, which will protect my customers worldwide, not only American customers. So you will see, I believe, the same thing, I've mentioned iPhone 6, you will see that American companies are coming up with sophisticated encryption technology. Second thing is, when the whole NSA revelation started, President Obama did a very smart move. He came up with the idea of this presidential commission, and they came up with remarkable findings about all these questions we are discussing today. And they proposed a couple of changes. And one of the changes they proposed is that intelligence services shouldn't undermine encryption standards, because encryption standards are very important, probably more important than lawful interception. I agree that this is a very tough question, but the president hasn't answered if this is a finding from his own commission he will follow or not. According to the New York Times, he will make the decision in the next weeks. Chris will know better probably.
So
I think it will be very interesting how the Americans, how you will solve this question. And let me say again, I totally agree. I think we need an encryption standard, and on the other hand, we shouldn't live in a world where lawful interception isn't possible. But the mess we are in is that we are all seeing that one part of interception is lawful interception, and the rest is interception for interception.
So I think there were statements even at the time that there is not an effort to undermine encryption standards. Again, not my area of expertise, but what I would say is that, there is a real challenge, though. If you don't have any access to the communications to prevent crimes or terrorists, and terrorists migrate to communication channels, and we've seen them change their actual modus operandi to try to avoid detection. They're not stupid. They're trying to do that. And so it really does mean there has to be some way to figure out this balance. And it's not, again, it's not easy.
Chris, absolutely. We don't want to live in a world where we have no access to this kind of communication for lawful interception, and we don't want to live in a world where you have access to all kinds of communication because it's fundamentally insecure.
And what President Obama said, even at the time, is he said, we're not targeting individuals for their individual communication, everyday people. We are trying to target for proper purpose. And some of the things that he laid out right after that speech, as I said before, were specific purposes that targeting would be done and how it would be done. That's an ongoing thing.
Mr. Binninger, let's hear the German government perspective.
Die junge Dame hat ja auch gefragt, ob wir die Verschlüsselung fördern sollten seitens der Gesetzgebung, seitens der Regierung. Das haben wir in Deutschland schon zweimal versucht. Also ich bin sehr dafür, dass Verschlüsselungstechniken sich mehr verbreiten, weil sie die Kommunikation doch eben in hohem Maße sicherer machen als heute. Das Spannungsfeld, dass dann kriminelle Terroristen diese Verschlüsselungstechnik auch nutzen, das haben wir schon lange, weil die sind es, die es zuerst nutzen. Ja, also das Problem haben wir schon heute. Das wäre nicht dadurch größer geworden, wenn wir jetzt sagen, der Normalbürger soll sie auch nutzen. Wir haben es zweimal versucht. Vor 15 Jahren, das Gesetz hieß elektronische Signatur, also die sichere elektronische Kommunikation, hat sich überhaupt nicht durchgesetzt, war eigentlich ein Ladenhüter, wurde nur ganz speziell von wenigen Leuten angewandt, weil zu kompliziert, zu aufwendig. Lieber haben die Bürger unverschlüsselt kommuniziert. Und wir haben es vor 2 Jahren nochmal versucht mit einem D-E-Mail-Gesetz, sichere E-Mail-Kommunikation, wo man auf der Strecke verschlüsseln kann oder Ende zu Ende. Auch dieses Gesetz und die Angebote der Telefonprovider, die es in Deutschland ja gibt für diesen Standard, hat sich nicht durchgesetzt. Also wir stehen vor der etwas paradoxen Situation, dass wir zwar alle gerne hätten, dass unsere Kommunikation sicherer wird, dass dazu Verschlüsselung die Methode der ersten Wahl wäre, aber sie viele Nutzer überhaupt nicht anwenden, weil sie ihnen zu aufwendig erscheint oder zu technisch kompliziert oder nicht so ganz komfortabel wie eben die normale E-Mail oder eben noch extremer die Kommunikation in sozialen Netzwerken, wo es ja völlig ungeschützt hin und her geht. Aber wir sollten es verbreiten, wir sollten es in die Fläche bringen. Ich erwarte es auch von Unternehmen, dass sie die Daten ihrer Kunden besser schützen. Und das Spannungsfeld, das Sicherheitsbehörden in ganz schweren Fällen eben diese Kommunikation auch brauchen, glaube ich, kann man trotzdem auch lösen, weil dieses Problem nicht neu ist. Das hatten wir schon in der Vergangenheit. Skype-Telefonate sind kaum abzuhören. Das Problem hat die Polizei schon heute und seit vielen Jahren. Und es ist auch nicht so, dass wir nur ein Ermittlungsinstrument haben, wie die Sicherheitsbehörden als Kommunikation abzufangen. Es gibt eine ganze Reihe von Ermittlungsinstrumenten für Sicherheitsbehörden, mit denen sie Verbrechen aufklären können oder Anschläge verhindern. Also da sind sie sowieso nie nur auf eines angewiesen, aber das ist ein Spannungsfeld, über das man sich unterhalten muss. Aber Verschlüsselung fördern bin ich sehr dafür, aber es muss eben so einfach sein, offenkundig und so leicht zu bedienen und nach Möglichkeit nichts kosten, dass es auch viele anwenden. Davon sind wir heute noch weit entfernt.
One last question, and I would ask you for a short answer, please. We're running out of time.
Well, my name is Marian. I'm also from Munich, and I have another question regarding hybrid warfare, but this time for Mr. Binninger. We all hear that NATO agreed that hybrid warfare after the Wales Summit is a very important point on the agenda. But is there any German hybrid warfare, are there any German hybrid warfare measures, or is the German government planning to implement some measures regarding hybrid warfare? Because I can't see any at the moment.
So whom do you want the question to be answered? I'll just give it to you. Yeah.
Also ich will es mal versuchen, ganz allgemein zu beantworten. Ich kann auch nicht ins Detail gehen und kann es weder bestätigen noch dementieren. Das gehört auch nicht hierher. Aber es ist auf jeden Fall so, dass wir natürlich das gesamte Internet, auch was die Bundeswehr betrifft, sehr genau im Blick haben, haben müssen. Das gilt auch für die Sicherheitsbehörden, das gilt auch für den BND, aber mehr, glaube ich, dazu bin ich jetzt auch nicht in der Lage, hier etwas zu sagen. Bitte um Verständnis.
Unfortunately. I just hear that we have a bit more time, so if the panel has more time, then we just have another questions. Hendrik, there are more questions to come.
And we got a lot of questions by Twitter as well, but now, again, who are you and what's your question and to whom?
Hi, I'm a journalist. I'm working for Business Daily here in Germany. I've got a question for General Hodges. And when I speak to cybersecurity experts, they mostly say it's impossible for them to find out where an attack actually comes from. Nevertheless, you kind of seem to be very sure about who does it, like Russia or North Korea. So my question straightforward is, can you tell where cyber attacks come from? And if yes, then how?
Well, yes, you can, and two, no, I won't tell you how.
So next question, please.
Yeah, the next question is from Twitter.
No. Mr. Painter wants to answer.
It does go to some of the things we were discussing earlier. This is not just technical attribution.
You said the financial follow the money.
Well, there's lots of other ways. There's lots of ways you do attribution, even before the cyber world existed, and in terms of motives, in terms of infrastructures, in terms of all the things you would look at, and where you can gather that information. So it's not an insurmountable problem. It's maybe harder if someone is launching a single attack on a single day and using several proxies. But if they're coming back and back again, they're leaving more footprints each time. I mean, that's true for criminals. I used to prosecute cyber criminals, and we prosecuted them. We found them. They didn't remain anonymous because they kept coming back and leaving these footprints. And sometimes it was money in other ways. So it's not insurmountable.
You're revealing the secrets he doesn't want to tell. Hendrik, next question, please.
Yeah. Now, the first question from Twitter. We got a question in German from Nikki Weber. Oh, is Nikki Weber here? Ah, okay. Come on, please, join us. Okay. Applause, please. Nikki Weber. The first Twitter question. Do you want to ask your question in German or in English? Really? Okay, in German it was, schützt kluges Verhalten im Internet von Missbrauch von Daten durch demokratische Regierungen. Das smart managing of my data, protect myself, for interception and data misuse. Yeah, also, and important was also democratic governments, yeah? Okay. And another question. So this question is for?
think it was for Mr. Binninger before.
Okay.
It's about an hour ago, so I can't remember actually.
Okay, bitte merken die Frage, das kann ich nochmal auf Deutsch sprechen, schützt kluges Verhalten im Internet auch vor Missbrauch von Daten durch demokratische Regierungen. And who are you and what is your question?
My name is Innocent from Munich, and also a colleague of Nikki. And I have a question concerning internet telephony. And the question goes to my two experts there, Mr. Binninger and Mr. Mascolo. Just recently, we heard that there is no inscription about internet telephony. That means there is no security when we do international calls. Most of the companies are switching to internet telephony because it's cheap. And the question is, what is the government doing about it in terms of making a law to protect the common users of internet telephony because it is cheap? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's start with the first question, and Hendrik, maybe you can kind of work on the second one again so we have it clearly up here. Mr. Binninger, there was the question whether an appropriate data use does protect from governmental sneaky views into your data?
Ich habe die Frage so verstanden, dass wenn man nicht völlig wahllos und ziellos mit seinen Daten umherwirft, dass es dann eben den Missbrauch, egal von welcher Stelle, natürlich reduziert, die Missbrauchswahrscheinlichkeit. Das ist ja ein Stück, was ich zu Beginn gesagt habe, der Nutzer, egal ob im Internet oder per Handy oder E-Mail oder im sozialen Netzwerk, der Nutzer trägt ganz maßgeblich dazu bei, ob seine Daten eben sicher sind oder nicht. Und je sorgloser er sich verhält, desto eher sind seine Daten anfällig für Diebstahl, für Angriffe, egal aus welcher Richtung. Das kann von kriminellen Gruppierungen sein, das kann von Regimen sein, wer auch immer sich dafür interessiert. Insofern kann ein sehr sorgfältiges, sicheres Umgehen mit den eigenen Daten die Missbrauchswahrscheinlichkeit und die Angreifbarkeit der Daten deutlich reduzieren. Also wenn so die Frage gemeint war, wo ist denn der Kollege? Also kurz Handzeichen, wenn ich Sie... War die Antwort okay oder hatte ich Sie falsch verstanden? War okay, also.
Okay,
also das Nutzerverhalten trägt dazu bei. Die zweite Frage, was wir tun, um die Benutzer von Skype-Telefonie, von Internettelefonie mehr zu schützen. Aktuell ist mir da jetzt kein Gesetzesvorhaben in Erinnerung, dass wir ganz gezielt für diese Art von Telefonie etwas machen. Es gibt für alle Telefonunternehmen, die in Deutschland sind, ein entsprechendes Gesetz, das sie zu Sicherheitsmaßnahmen natürlich verpflichtet. Aber hier dürften wir das Problem haben, dass Kommunikation in dem Moment, wo sie die Grenzen unseres Landes verlässt und damit auch den Geltungsbereich unserer Gesetze, immer schwieriger sein wird zu schützen und wir ein Schutzniveau nur dann erreichen können, wenn die Länder, wo Kommunikation dann durchläuft, den gleichen Standard gewährleisten. Das ist ja die Grundherausforderung, vor der wir ein paar Mal schon heute standen. Wenn Sie eine E-Mail oder was auch immer um die ganze Welt schicken, man kann die Kommunikation an einem beliebigen Punkt abgreifen, wo deutsches Recht eben nicht gilt, wo deutsche Behörden gar keinen Zugriff haben, wo man auch nicht schützen kann, dann ist die Kommunikation auf dieser Strecke nur so gut geschützt, wie die Standards dort sind an der jeweiligen Stelle. Und das kann im Zweifel eben sehr niedrig sein.
Do you think that consumers are aware of that they face different security levels? Or is there maybe a point where there should be more information on which communication or which behavior in the internet it should be made clear by somebody, maybe the government, what that means for the personal security? I'm asking now you.
Jetzt glaube ich, muss ich der jungen Generation hier nicht sagen, was man alles im Internet machen kann und besser sein lässt. Ich bin da eher der technische Laie. Trotzdem habe ich die Erfahrung gemacht, technisches Know-how und technischer Sachverstand oder ganz unbefangener Umgang, so wie er bei der Jugend und den jüngeren Menschen heute vorhanden ist, schützt nicht vor sorglosem Umgang. Macht es eher noch wahrscheinlicher vielleicht sogar. Und deshalb glaube ich, ist Aufklärung, Information schon ein Gebot und dem fühlen wir uns auch verpflichtet. Es gibt verschiedene Initiativen, wo Sie diese ganzen Dinge abrufen können, auch was die Sicherheit Ihres Computers angeht. Wir sind als Deutschland eines der Länder mit den meisten Botnetzen. Botnetze sind entführte Rechner, die nachts zusammengeschaltet werden für irgendwelche Attacken. Da sind wir in Deutschland leider führend, was diese Zahl der entführten Rechner angeht. Kommunikation, die unser Land verlässt, darauf muss man hinweisen. Oder wenn ich eben bei einem Unternehmen Kunde bin, das seinen Sitz, sowohl rechtlich als auch den Sitz seines Servers, also wo die Daten sind, nicht im Geltungsbereich unserer Gesetze hat, dann muss ich wissen, dass die Daten eben nur so gut geschützt sind, wie eben die Gesetzeslage in dem jeweiligen Land auch ist. Das ist so eine, ich glaube, eine Grunderkenntnis bis hin zur Mail, die die halbe Welt umkreist. Und deshalb auch ja klingt ein bisschen wie immer wiederholen, die Empfehlung von mir, es kommt auch ganz entscheidend auf das Verhalten der User an, wie sicher sind ihre Daten. Sie haben wirklich eine große Macht. Ja.
Thank you. Hendrik, please.
Yeah, two young users here by my side. Who are you? My name is Philip. And you?
Alex.
And both are from Munich? Okay, you first, please, your question.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Painter, you mentioned earlier the Sony case as an example that terrorism should not have any impact on our daily behavior, on the way we just do things, on the way we decide about how we act daily. And I think that's a quite good example. I totally agree with you, but do you have, and the question goes to the whole panel, are there any reflections about what happens if governmental security services have exactly this impact, that people changed the way they are just living daily? For example, me, I don't write anything online because I think maybe there's the NSA watching me and I will be, I don't know. So the question actually is, what happens if the impact of governmental security services is the impact that actually those security services want to avoid from terrorists to have on the on the people.
Thank you. And your question?
Yeah, my question is directed to General Hodges. Let's stick to America. So you said that the prime function of the media and the internet is, on the first hand, to gather information, but on the other hand, you said that the surveillance system, so the security of your own country, is on the first place. So is the primary thing of a state. So my question to you is, what's more important for you, gathering information or security for your country? Because I don't think that the media, the internet, is doing their job, because their job is to inform people, but people are not getting informed enough of what's happening, for example, in Israel or Palestine, what's happening there. Nobody knows. I read an article from an American journalist who basically didn't know what is happening there, researched it, went to Palestine, and so she knows now what's really happening there. So the media isn't doing their job, so gathering information. But then there's the NSA and the surveillance system. So do you think that the internet and the media lost their way? So they're not on the right path, because now what they're basically doing is surveilling people, watching people, gathering information about people from Facebook and now and on, but they're not informing people.
Okay, let's get the other two questions for the last round, and then we'll pass it on to the panel.
Eine Nachfrage an Herrn Binninger, sagten Sie. Ja. Nein,
So it's you.
Kurze, knackige Frage an Sie, Herr Binninger. Sie sagten, innerhalb der geografischen Grenzen von Deutschland würde der ganze Datenverkehr geschützt. Dann frage ich mich, was ist, wenn innerhalb der geografischen Grenzen von Deutschland von anderen abgezapft wird?
Okay, danke. And your name and your question?
My name is Fabian, and I want to ask a question regarding to the protection of infrastructure. And I'm wondering whether centralization is the right way to do it, or if we're better off, for example, with energy supply, to enable or to even enforce that every county or even on a municipal level is in charge of energy supply. So instead of having like a central entity, there's like an autonomy of like energy supply. So if like one thread is pulled, the whole piece is not coming apart.
Security of infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Painter, you want to start?
Yeah, quickly on the first point, I think you have to. We've been very clear on this, and I should be clear again that the United States does not collect intelligence for the purpose of suppressing or burdening criticism or dissent, or for disadvantaging people based on their ethnicity, their race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, what they say. If you're afraid of saying something. That's not what we do. And I think it's important, though, as you mentioned, to rebuild this trust. And that's what a lot of the decisions and the U.S. have been focused on is what's the right oversight, how do you do this? And that's not a discussion just for the U.S. That's a discussion for all democracies to have. Because there are certain countries that will never have that discussion because their point in doing this is to exactly that, to go after people because of what they say and because they criticize the government. So I think we have to draw that line. On the infrastructure issue, look, I'm not an energy expert. There are a lot at this conference, however. But what I would say is that there are lots of different approaches that you can take. And there's two parts of this. Building better defenses so that people don't get into the networks and actually cause these problems. But also resiliency, so that even if they get in, you have ways of rebounding and being able to provide these services. So they go hand in glove. It's not just prevention, but it's prevention and resiliency together. And that's true in the physical world as well as the cyber world.
Mr. Hodges, the next question was to you, gathering information.
You asked the perfect question, actually, because in a democracy, security doesn't come before freedom, constitutional freedoms. In fact, the beautiful thing of democracy is that they are so intertwined and that there is a constant tension. Every time you get on a Lufthansa flight, you agree to give up privacy. In order to take advantage of the airplane, you allow everything you own to be searched. So that's something we all have adjusted to because people who would want to who are terrorists would be willing to destroy an airplane full of innocent people. So each of our nations working together have also determined that there is a healthy tension between protecting privacy. In the US, it's guaranteed in the Constitution, yet I know that every time I type something, it potentially could end up somewhere else. So the individual responsibility is an important part of this. So I would not say that priority of security comes over individual freedom. It is a tension. You make a great point about media. I think the media has failed in many cases. They're not perhaps aggressive enough in checking to ensure, does the Congress do its part in oversight over the agencies? Do they challenge our political leaders? I think that's a fair charge to make.
Mr. Binninger, I think you got the very last question of today.
Ich gebe mir Mühe. Sie hatten ja gefragt, auf meinen Satz vorhin, innerhalb Deutschlands gilt unser Datenschutzwerk und da halte ich die Daten für geschützt. Natürlich, wenn es kriminelle Energie gibt, verhindert das zunächst mal nicht. Aber wenn Sie den Fall vielleicht, das interpretiere ich jetzt mal, was ist, wenn deutsche Nachrichtendienste hier in Deutschland Daten abgreifen? Den Fall hatte ich auch gedacht, dass Sie den meinen, aber zuerst den ersten Fall. Wenn deutsche Nachrichtendienste, deutsche Sicherheitsbehörden Daten von Kommunikation erlangen wollen, haben wir in Deutschland ein sehr enges, strenges Regelwerk, das entweder einen Richter dazuschalten muss oder bei Nachrichtendiensten die sogenannte G10-Kommission, die besteht nur aus Juristen, die die Befähigung zum Richteramt haben. G10 deshalb, weil der Artikel 10 Schutz des Fernmeldegeheimnisses. Also die müssen das absegnen. Da haben wir klare Voraussetzungen, Zustimmungspflichten, hohe Hürden. Also da halte ich jetzt nach der doch einigen Jahren Erfahrung in diesem Bereich und die Kontrolle der Dienste die Missbrauchswahrscheinlichkeit für doch sehr, sehr gering und es wird auch sehr maßvoll angewandt. Also es ist eben bei uns gerade nicht so, dass die Nachrichtendienste zu Zehntausenden solche Anordnungen beantragen, sondern wir sind immer eher im dreistelligen Bereich maximal für ein ganzes Land. Das halte ich für sehr maßvoll. Und dann gibt es den Punkt, unter welchen Voraussetzungen dürfen Daten, die deutsche Dienste gewonnen haben, sie an Partnerdienste weitergegeben werden. Das gibt es auch, das ist auch im Gesetz geregelt. Und da glaube ich, sind wir auch gut geschützt. Den anderen Fall will ich jetzt niemand unterstellen, den Sie vielleicht mitgedacht haben. Was ist, wenn sich ein ausländischer Nachrichtendienst an nichts hält und eben einfach selber hier agiert? Dann will ich Ihnen deutlich sagen, was es ist. Dann ist es Spionage. Und dafür bauen wir die Spionageabwehr aus beim Verfassungsschutz, weil wir das auch nicht zulassen können, dass andere Staaten, wer auch immer, uns ausspioniert. Also insofern gibt es die klare Zuordnung, wann welcher Sachverhalt passt. Es gibt die Arbeit der deutschen Dienste, klar geregelt. Es gibt den Austausch von deutschen Diensten mit ausländischen Partnern, auch klar geregelt. Und wenn andere meinen, sie müssten uns ausspionieren, ist es eine Straftat und dann ermittelt der Generalbundesanwalt.
So thank you very much for this insights. Very last round. One sentence, 10 seconds, please, from everybody. We have been discussing tonight privacy, security, and you. So if you would have to address a topic, just one sentence, and you'd say, that's my favorite, that's the very most important topic, what would it be, Mr. Mascolo?
The most pressing topic?
Yes.
Finding a solution for how to protect our privacy and liberty in the Western world and find a common standard for that.
Mr. Painter.
So I go back to what I said in the beginning. This is an important, that debate is an important debate, but let's also not take our eyes off the long-term prize. Let's not let others who want to take advantage of this debate and a concern change the ultimate nature of the internet so it becomes more state-controlled, so that we have a regime in place where the repressive regimes are really going to take away this thing that's been one of the greatest things for, I think, humankind. So that's what I'd say.
General Hodges.
And I think that the security of our countries is based on a collective security. NATO, the EU, and almost all the countries in NATO are in the EU. The Bundeskanzler has provided great leadership in the EU to keep sanctions together, for example, and Germany is an important part of NATO. So whatever issues have happened, we have got to remain unified in what we really care about and figure out how to maintain that trust.
Mr. Binninger.
Ja, Bürger und Unternehmen dazu zu bewegen, mehr für die Sicherheit ihrer Daten zu tun, nicht sorglos zu sein, sondern das, was man tun kann als Privatperson, als Unternehmen auch selber zu tun.
Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to all the participants on the panel. Have a nice evening.